This is In the Loop. I'm Christian Bryant. It's a Monday, which means this show is my way of avoiding my inbox. Most of it is spam anyway. Here's what we got for y'all. Tonight, with new forms of digital art comes new forms of digital art theft. We've got a fascinating look at a new frontier of online piracy. Then, even with vaccines on the rise and COVID case numbers declining, a lot of folks are still feeling a bit hesitant to jump back into the office or hanging with friends. We'll unpack what has people pressing pause on a return to normalcy. But first, here's what you need to know right now. Take a look at these graphs from Johns Hopkins University. They show the daily deaths and new COVID cases in the US over the last 90 days. We are seeing some of the lowest levels of both since the pandemic started. Meanwhile, almost 50% of the US population has received at least one COVID-19 vaccine dose. As the need and demand slows down in the US, the president pledged to send at least 20 million doses of Pfizer, Moderna, and Johnson & Johnson vaccines to countries still struggling with the pandemic.
We know America will never be fully safe until the pandemic that's raging globally is under control. No oceans wide enough, no walls high enough to keep us safe.
Last week, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention made some pretty swift changes to mask rules in the US. Basically, if you are fully vaccinated, health officials say you only need to worry about masking up in crowded indoor spaces. The move led to some stores like Walmart, Costco, and Trader Joe's to get rid of their mask requirements for customers that are fully vaccinated. Of course, there is some concern that that caveat doesn't mean much since there's no proof of vaccination required. It's really all just based on the honor system.
These vaccines are powerful tools, but we don't have a way to differentiate those in public who are fully vaccinated from those who are not.
There is one big exception to the mask rule being lifted. All of the stores say masks will still be required at locations in cities and states that have their own mask mandates in place. As Israel's military and Hamas in Gaza continue trading airstrikes and rockets, collateral damage is increasing and civilian casualties are rising. In Gaza, at least 200 Palestinians have been killed since tensions in the region reignited last week. Israeli airstrikes flattened several buildings. Israel Defense Forces say they were targeting places where Hamas militants lived. Hamas is a Palestinian political party with a military wing. The group aims to liberate Palestine from Israeli occupation. On the Israeli side, at least 8 people have been killed as Hamas has fired thousands of rockets. One hit a Jewish synagogue, though it didn't result in any injuries. Israel's Iron Dome defense system has kept the casualties on their side relatively low in many of these flare-ups. It's worth noting that that dome is kept and maintained with the help of $1.6 billion in funding. Several countries are calling for a ceasefire. The Biden administration has said Israel has a right to defend itself. During a press conference today, the Secretary of State called on Hamas and other groups in Gaza to end the rocket attacks, while also putting some pressure on Israel to avoid civilian deaths in Gaza.
I believe Israel, as a democracy, has an extra burden to do everything possible to avoid civilian casualties, even as it defends itself and its people.
It looks like the Supreme Court will take up an abortion case that could challenge the long-standing Roe v. Wade ruling that legalized abortions. In the next court term, the justices will take up a controversial Mississippi law which banned abortions after 15 weeks. The law makes an exception only for medical emergencies or cases that could cause severe birth abnormalities. Lower courts ruled that the law was unconstitutional under Roe v. Wade. The 1973 case established that states can't ban abortions before fetal viability, which is the point that fetuses can sustain life outside the womb. That usually happens around 24 weeks. This case will be the first time the Supreme Court's new conservative majority will have a chance to weigh in on states' abortion laws. For as much fun as it's been talking about NFTs or non-fungible tokens, they're presenting some pretty complex issues for the art world. NFT auctions can mean big payouts for artists unless their work is being stolen. Our Newsy original series Next Level is known for plugging us into the world of technology and culture. In this installment, Newsy's Matt Pick gives us some insight into NFT art piracy and how to stop it.
They're stirring up Hollywood controversies. They're reinventing the sports trading card market. They're resurrecting ancient memes for profit. The blockchain-based collectibles known as NFTs are showing up everywhere right now, especially in the marketplace for digital art. Creators who tie their work to an NFT can sell the token off for a sometimes sizable profit. But as the NFT gold rush grows, so too does the incentive for piracy. More and more artists are finding their work has been made into NFTs without their consent, and there are no clear safeguards to stop it from happening.
A fellow artist privately messaged me and said, "Did you give permission for this website to make your art?" And of course not, because I haven't even set up a wallet. I'm not even on the blockchain.
Pseudonymous artist Sabby Life works primarily in virtual reality, painting digital 3D sculptures with VR painting programs like Tiltbrush. She told us she's still neutral on whether NFTs will end up being good for the art community or not. Sabby hasn't decided whether to get into NFTs herself, but someone else made the decision for her. A token of her piece, Winter Landscape, went up for sale on VR NFT for around $332, without her knowledge.
I was very upset, and I went straight to Twitter about it, and it wasn't just my art, it was other artists that I know. And the entire point of NFTs and the blockchain is to support the actual artist, and this is the only art that we know about because it was caught, right? So how many other pieces out there are being sold that we don't know about?
An NFT, or non-fungible token, works off of the same blockchain technology that supports cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin and Ethereum. Instead of minting new cryptocurrency, NFT miners turn their blocks into certificates, embedding a link to a specific piece of media, and then selling those certificates on to buyers who want a collectible tied to that media object. The trouble is, anyone can create an NFT out of anyone else's work. There's almost no oversight on many NFT platforms to ensure an auction is tied to the actual artist. Since NFTs are kind of a new trend, there's a lot of legal uncertainty for artists whose work's been pirated.
All the answers to that sort of copyright dispute are, how much money have you got?
David Gerard is a journalist and author who's extensively covered blockchain-based technologies. He's somewhat skeptical about how it's currently being used.
Cryptocurrency is a multi-layered fractal lasagna of bad ideas.
An NFT doesn't actually include any artwork, only a link to it, which makes it hard for artists to assert copyright or ownership over a crypto token that references their art. But the platforms actually auctioning the NFTs do display the artwork tied to the token, which does open those sites up to copyright claims.
To their credit, most NFT sites do respect that, so that's good, because they're on, frankly, dodgy legal ground already, so being responsive is probably good.
Pirated NFTs are bad enough in their own right, but it can especially sting for artists who've had strong objections to blockchain-based art sales. Crypto economies require ecologically devastating amounts of energy to maintain, and the fragility of the nascent market has convinced a lot of artists that the environmental cost isn't worth the potential gain.
In the beginning, like back in fall 2020, when it was taking off, there was very little discussion about the environmental impacts. And I was just like, hey, why are people calling themselves environmental activists when they're minting NFTs?
Connor Bell is a digital artist who designs fractal animations. His artwork showed up on the NFT seller OpenSeas, despite his skepticism about the concept.
My animation was in a trading card, and there was a link to the page where it was. So they referred to the source, they credited me, but they were selling an item with my artwork on it. I had been critical of NFTs before that anyway. So I was just hey, guess what? My artwork was stolen.
Engaging with the NFT market can take a social toll as well as an environmental and financial one. Bell told Newsy he's faced waves of harassment from his public objections to NFTs. And Sabby says she's noticed rifts forming in digital art spaces around NFTs.
It's sad. It's not really spoken, but I see it. Maybe they're not liking their posts as much, or, actually people will unfriend you if you mention that.
I know some people firsthand who are this is helping me make rent. This is really good for me right now. And I totally feel for those people. My problems are with the unstoppable army of affluent tech bros who just constantly sell NFTs and shut down any criticism.
Ultimately, Sabby and Bell were both able to get their work removed from the NFT sites after raising the issue on social media. But there are a plethora of different NFT sellers out there. Trying to police every NFT auction of your work could quickly get exhausting. There are a few NFT projects that are trying to address art theft. The Pastel blockchain is floating an AI-driven image detection algorithm to detect duplicate uploads to the network. And NFT registration service Artery uses independent researchers to verify their tokens line up with the right artists. But those kinds of concepts have yet to be implemented on a broader scale. Until they are, the NFT market seems like it'll continue to be a haven for piracy and a contentious subject for the art community.
When you're back, I'll tell you what's trending. And because of that, I won't be taking questions about my screen time report. Thank you. A new player could be entering the streaming landscape. Here's what's trending. AT&T is trending after announcing it's spinning off its Warner Media division and combining it with Discovery to form a new entertainment entity.
What unites people? Stories.
Under this deal, Warner Media, which includes HBO, Warner Brothers, CNN, and sports networks, would merge with Discovery, which includes HGTV and the Food Network, to name a couple, to form an even larger yet-to-be-named entertainment company. That means more competition for other streaming companies and possibly a realignment of my budget because I can't pay for all these streaming services. AT&T will get $43 billion out of this deal, which is about half as much as they paid for Time Warner, which became Warner Media back in 2018. AT&T clearly decided something wasn't working with its media strategy and, in a world of streamers, decided this spinoff was best. We still don't exactly know how this will affect consumers, like folks who already have HBO Max or Discovery Plus accounts, but we've got a while to speculate. The deal is expected to be finalized next year. If living your best life was a person, it'd be J. Cole. On Sunday, the 36-year-old rapper made his professional basketball debut with Rwanda's Patriots Basketball Club of the Basketball Africa League. This was also the first game for the league itself. Cole finished with 3 points, 3 rebounds, and 2 assists in 18 minutes, which is fine. I mean, probably better than most of us would do though. For what it's worth, his professional basketball career didn't just come out of thin air. He played college ball as a walk-on at St. John's University, and last July, he wrote an article outlining his pro ball ambitions. He signed with the Patriots Basketball Club last week. Cole arguably owned the weekend between his pro basketball debut and the release of his 6th studio album, The Offseason, which prompted various levels of excitement.
J. Cole?
Yeah.
Jermaine?
Yes.
Cole?
Yes.
You talking about the one that just said, I could put an M on your head, now you Luigi, brother? Him?
Yes, him.
I want to believe, and that might be even easier after 60 Minutes went all X-Files Sunday night.
So what you're telling me is that UFOs, unidentified flying objects, are real.
Bill, I think we're beyond that already.
The venerable news magazine took a deep dive into unidentified aerial phenomena, or UAPs, and interviewed a former Navy pilot and the former head of the Pentagon's UFO investigation program. This comes ahead of a report that will be delivered to Congress in June from the Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force. UAP is not as snappy an acronym as, I don't know, SHIELD, but whatever. In April of 2020, which was already a pretty weird time, the Pentagon finally acknowledged that something that ain't ours has been flying around above us, and they had the video. We don't quite know what to expect from this upcoming report, but it's unlikely that we'll find an ET living among us or any other significant contact with otherworldly beings. I mean, if you were an alien and saw what was going on down here on Earth, would you engage or keep it moving? Yeah, I thought so. The CDC definitely caused some commotion after updating their rules on mask wearing for vaccinated folks. Basically saying, in most cases, you can forget about it. That's not doing much for our collective anxiety, though, after a year where many people have been extra careful around each other while covering their faces. As a part of Mental Health Awareness Month, our Breakthrough series aims to give you all some useful information on mental health-related issues. Newsy's Lindsay Thies spoke to experts who say that uneasy feeling you might have about socializing after COVID is totally normal.
Okay, so you have your vaccine card, and now the CDC says in certain situations you don't need a mask, but you still feel that kind of dreadful feeling when it comes to even getting together with family or friends. Don't worry, you are not alone.
Anxiety is not a push button function. You can't just turn it off. You know, people are going to have some apprehensions. I think it's completely natural. If you didn't, I'd be shocked.
Experts say whether it's back into the office after working from home or feeling at a family or friendly gathering, communicate your boundaries in a simple way.
This might stir up some anxiety in us because we don't want to negatively impact our relationships. So instead of over-explaining why you feel the way you do or why you need what you do, a simple framework you can use for clearly communicating your boundaries is by saying, I feel when you, and I need. And remember that the people who care about you, even if they don't immediately understand your boundaries, will make an effort.
Lindsay Thies, Newsy, San Francisco.
Here's one way I'd like to communicate my boundaries. I feel that when y'all take your masks off, you should also do a breath check because mass shootings in the US only make up a small percentage of annual gun deaths, but they have an outsized appearance in our news cycles. Newsy's Amber Strong spoke to experts who say the way audiences perceive these attacks are shaped by how they're covered or not covered by news outlets, including our own.
You're an editor in a national newsroom. 2 mass shootings come in over the wire. One took place inside of a home, the other at a crowded grocery store. Both saw multiple confirmed deaths. Both suspects are dead.
What do you cover first? And which shooting gets the most airtime? Experts say people perceive equally deadly mass shootings in different ways depending on how random the violence appears. And that appearance can affect what gets covered and how.
Take a look at recent violence in one city, Indianapolis. While the events didn't happen at the same time, the number of deaths in each fit the Gun Violence Archive's description of a mass shooting. 4 or more people shot and or killed during the same event. There have been 3 in the city this year. One occurred January 24th, 5 people, one of them pregnant, killed inside of a home. The second, March 13th, 4 people shot and killed at a home, allegedly following an argument over a stimulus check.
Malik Halfaker was taken into custody in connection to a quadruple murder.
The third, April 15th, a gunman killed 8 people at a FedEx facility.
Started shooting in the parking lot, got inside.
We examined national news coverage of each shooting from 4 different outlets, including Newsy, the day of and the week following. Here's what we found.
Excluding things like opinion pieces, the first shooting at the home was covered 9 times. The second covered 3 times. The third at FedEx, 48 times.
If it happens to people who are not like us, and we think, okay, well, this is something that happens to those kind of people and not to my kind of people. We look for ways to kind of create a distance from the event.
According to Paul Slovic, a psychologist who studies risk and decision-making, it's known as perception of risk.
It was a terrifying situation for thousands of people.
Take, for instance, the 2002 DC sniper attacks.
You didn't know where this person was going to show up next, so you couldn't sort of protect yourself by staying away from the place where it's likely to happen, because you didn't know that. One of the things that affects our perception of risk is a sense of control.
So an editorial team can make the argument that there's an unknown risk of a grocery store shooting. It could happen to anyone, and thus the audience has a greater need to know about it. On the flip side, audience members can remove their own interests if the shooting takes place in a situation or an area they can avoid.
The sort of mass shootings that we see in the news that get the live cable coverage and alerts on your phone from national news companies make up less than 1% of shooting victims. The mass shootings that don't get covered are mostly those harming Black and brown communities.
According to Gun Violence Archive, of the U.S.'s nearly 15,000 gun-related deaths in 2021, around 200 come from mass shootings.
Jim McMillan, a Pulitzer Prize-winning photojournalist and the founder of the Center for Gun Violence Reporting, held a summit asking reporters, doctors, and community leaders what can be done to cover all types of gun violence, public or domestic, in an ongoing, comprehensive manner.
journalists should take a public health response to gun violence. And what that means is to approach gun violence as an epidemic, as the epidemic that it is. And like all epidemics, one that can be contained and disrupted and mitigated with intervention strategies and eradicated by addressing root causes.
That's contextual, humanized reporting on every mass shooting. That can be hard given their numbers, and it can also lead to something known as psychic numbing, where the audience has trouble compassionately processing so much death. However, McMillan says that may be necessary for newsrooms in a time where gun violence is, as the CDC describes, a public health crisis. Amber Strong, Newsy, Washington.
If you haven't done so already, feel free to reach out to us on Twitter using the hashtag NewsyInTheLoop. We're coming up on 1 year of ITL, so hit us up and let us know what you like, what you don't like, and maybe what you want to see in year 2. If you don't do it in that order, though, we're gonna block you. If you're a sports fan, you know there's something special about watching a game in person. The overpriced concessions, the kiss cam, the threat of fisticuffs between rival fans. Ugh, I love it. Teams across the country are figuring out how exactly to bring fans back safely during the pandemic. National reporter Chris Stewart hits us with some sights and sounds that I've truly missed.
I've loved the Cardinals since I was a kid.
I bleed blue. I'm a true Blues fan, and they're the best.
I like going to the games with my grandpa.
Our lives can be shaped by what we love.
They mean everything to me. Besides, of course, my family and all that, they're like #1 in my life.
You may know how hard it's been to live so distant from the field, the ice, the experience.
You can't get the same vibe at home.
But in many places across America, you can start to feel that love again, in person.
Take care of business.
Few know the power of a crowd more than Chris Kerber. He's been the radio voice of the St. Louis Blues for more than 2 decades.
Sports teams represent a city, they represent a fan base, they represent a region. They bring positivity.
The city of St. Louis let the Blues start with around 1,400 fans in the arena in February. For this game, the numbers increased to around 4,000, still less than a quarter full. Most cities' health departments have followed the same framework, limiting the number of fans even for outdoor games. But in some places, like Georgia, Major League Baseball's Atlanta Braves are playing outside to a packed stadium of fans. No capacity limits.
You can't worry about the health. You got to take care of your own house first.
The safety is important. The fans, when they come into the buildings, they want to feel safe. They tell you.
This season, masks have been required. In person, you can see some seats are zip-tied to keep pods of fans socially distant. All tickets are digital, food and drink orders cashless. Fans can also use an app to have an order brought to their seats so they don't have to stand in line.
Do you feel from what you've seen that fans are following the guidelines that have been put in place?
We would not have been able to expand our capacity and bring more fans in if the fans didn't comply with the orders and understand.
Sports still feel different in 2021. The St. Louis Cardinals have also limited fans this season and put COVID measures in place.
The #1 thing is vaccinations. As those go up, and we just continue to encourage people to get their vaccinations so we can return to normal.
We love being here and being a part and seeing everything.
It's absolutely amazing.
But being so close to normal can only increase the desire for a full return.
I can't wait till we get back to full capacity and the boards are rocking again.
That's it for us, gang. As always, thanks for watching. We'll be back tomorrow with more in the loop. Same time, same place. Top stories from Newsy are headed your way right now.